Continue the day here, the European Hearthstone Grandmasters. We've got 2 more matches for you before we move on to Americas a little bit later on with TJ and Frodan. So plenty more Hearthstone to come if you're going to get comfortable all day with you Sunday and just watch some top-level Hearthstone. So I'm excited to carry on the day here. And we do have Bozzzton versus Viper coming up as our match number 4. And these two have already clashed a few times, even directly and indirectly, whilst fighting for those spots in Division A a little bit early last week.
Yeah, it was really crucial encounters between them. They were both fighting for those last few available spots, Division A. And of course, both of them ended up missing out on it. Viper had his fate sealed a little bit earlier, not making it through to the top 4, which he needed. Bozzzton went all the way down to the wire, pushing it with Psycho and Felkane to make it into Division A. But unfortunately for both of them, this is going to end up being a Division B match because they were both ultimately unsuccessful in their quest.
Yeah, funnily enough, Bozzzton beat Viper to make sure Viper did get there as well. So maybe a bit of a grudge match coming up here. Bozzzton looks like he's going to be on this Galakron Rogue for his first game. Just a note as well, both players banning Demon Hunter, I think, in the bans there. But also, Bozzzton is the one of 2 players, Psycho being the other one, who brought Galakron Priest to this weekend's Zottel, which, honestly, the more I see of it, the more I'm becoming a fan of it just not only as a deck, but as a bring to the weekend.
Yeah, I was expecting to see a little bit more of it, to be honest. The one thing that was holding me back when I was sort of trying to theorize a lineup for this tournament was if you bring Galakron Priest, I personally don't think it's that strong against Demon Hunter. I know that's a point of contention with some people, but it's a hill I'm willing to die on. And so it kind of left me with a ban Demon Hunter lineup when I was trying to do that instead. And like I want a ban Warrior, right? Like I just do. It's too good. I want a ban Warrior lineup. So maybe that was one of the things that forced it out potentially. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to get into Priest later on because we are dealing with a little bit more Highlander Mage, it looks like, coming out from Viper here early on.
Yeah, well, we're just maybe going to see more of what we just saw in the previous series. A lot of mage games, or at least there's some crazy mage games that is going to be going up against that rogue. And again, I think Highlander Mage, as I said, what's interesting for me is I believe it is deck number 4 this week, but does it make the cut when you're messing, when I think a lot of the players are going to mess about a little bit more with the lineups next week? By that, I mean, I believe Rogue is going to take quite a large hit in the popularity. Something else has to pick that up. And the problem is, if you look at something I would expect, i.e., are a lot of players going to pick up Hunter? Then do you actually want to bring Mage? It starts to get really weird, right? When you have those like 2 4th deck spots to fill instead of the usual one.
Let the games begin.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I think things could shift a lot based on, you know, an upswing in Hunters or even an upswing in Zoos even, because although it feels like we've seen a lot of it, I believe there's only 6 total in Europe. So, you know, that can still end up being a higher percentage of Warlocks overall, which can then swing things even more if people choose to bank on the success of Zoo, or just, you know, could go the other way. And if Zoo gets eliminated from the format completely, what does that mean? So there's things definitely to looking forward. And I think that's the strength of now having this period of Grandmasters where we do just settle into the format, is now that format can evolve week on week from this point onward.
Exactly. Very exciting going forward. But very exciting into game number 1 here. Bozzzton on the top on the Rogue. Viper on this Reno Mage. And honestly, look at the Viper's hand already. Not only the Solarian, just ready and locked and loaded, ready to go, but the Dragoncaster plus choice now of the big payoff spells, or 2 of the big payoff spells for that, if by that point Viper can get hold of the Dragon in hand. Is actually Ancient Mysteries ever a little bit better than just dropping Solarian here, because you don't activate as many of the Rogue's cards now?
Yeah,
it's by playing the minion.
Definitely worth considering, right? Those words were just about to come out of my mouth of, you know, you give your opponent a big Seal of Fate target with a minion as opposed to, you know, having to use your face instead, which is probably slightly better. There's also the consideration of maybe you need the spell damage somewhere down the line for a removal turn. Like maybe it becomes relevant with Ray of Frost, for example, to just take out a minion using both copies of it if you need to, but that seems pretty niche. So I think all things considered, it's fine. Just get your Bloodfen Raptor in play.
And now is Bozzzton going to follow up with a 4/4 Van Cleef here, or is he just going to take the Seal Fate and call it a day? Or, for option number 3, backstab into Evil Miscreant, which again, in a slightly later manner, does make a large Van Cleef itself, or adds to.
Can also go trade, or not even trade, you could just leave it up if you wanted to, and just use the Seal Fate this turn.
On the
and
face?
Then that leads you into, potentially on the face, because that leads you then into backstab Lackey Edwin Van Cleef next turn as a 6/6, which is suddenly looking a lot more impressive. But that does rely on there being a target to backstab, hence the Seal Fating the face instead of the minion play. It's a little bit weird, but something to think about for sure.
I definitely wouldn't hate it. I guess the overall question is a 6/6 next turn with a bit of a fancier play, or just a 4/4 this turn. Was the big difference there really for Bozzzton?
Right.
He just wants to go with a high tempo.
An Edwin in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Or an Edwin on the board is worth 2 in the hand. Something. It's there somewhere, I'll find it. Come back to me.
Okay. I will say I do like the non-attack here from Bozzzton on the Spy Mistress, because even in these early turns, although we can see Viper has stuff to spend his mana on, a lot of the time Mage doesn't have anything great to spend their mana on outside maybe coin into 4-drop. And if you negate that by letting them ping, that can be a good thing, but I think on average you just don't want to give a good ping target to the Mage in the early game.
Right.
Viper is running the Flame Ward and Dice Barrier list, of course. So Bozzzton fully aware of what that secret could mean. Again, speaking of ping turns, the Van Cleef is now very pingable.
Indeed. Good sequencing from Bozzzton, though. To find out there if it was Flame Ward. Normally, you're kind of hard-coded to attack with your biggest minion, because sort of that's the first thing you figure out about Flame Ward, since the attack goes through, unlike Explosive Trap, get the most damage through. But in that case, since the Edwin doesn't die, it's actually correct to maximize damage to attack with the smaller one first.
We'll see if Viper's going to plan for the long game with the Pyroblast pick, or whether he's going to go for a much more realistic Spellbender.
Oh, this is just lethal. You just draw Mana Saber next turn, you ramp up to Alex, and then you just, Pyroblast him in the face, Dragoncaster
next turn
Pyroblast.
you just coin Dragoncaster on 5 into Pyroblast face, just assert that dominance right now.
Realistically, the other 2 cards are quite garbage.
Yeah,
like, jokes aside.
The point for the Spellbender is it's just castable now. It makes Bozzzton have to consider secret.
It's not castable now. Okay, sure. That's fine. Sorry, I forgot he was Arcane Blasting. I thought he still had to ping the Edwin. I just forgot that we were looking at an Arcane Blast.
I was like, it is castable? Yeah, so this is just the target. Funnily enough, with the Shadow Step, it has a very funny interaction there. But yeah, I think it's. I think that was just about pipped it, just purely because Viper could actually just utilize his mana that turn.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Now Bozzzton on the road of discovery to what this secret is. Now he knows it's not entered.
Slowly learning, piece by piece. No Ice Barrier, no Mirror Entity.
Bill doesn't know if it's a Flame Ward though, right? Or did he get an attack there?
Yeah, I don't think so. Oh no, he attacked with the...
Oh yeah, the one one.
No,
The 1/1.
Yeah.
I mean, you put in a Dragoncaster in your deck, you just want another one. He does have Deep Freeze. Oh wait, no, it's
This is Power of Creation.
Too many created by Subtle. My mind's going crazy after that last series.
It's fine. That's what we had the break for. You were supposed to just reset, re-establish a bit of sanity, and we can come back.
5 minutes is enough time to reset from that last game of Hearthstone. Then...
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. I haven't heard that particular caster mistake in a long time, though.
It was honestly because
this battle cry of Power of Creation is really cool.
It was honestly, I was looking at the deck list when the card was played, I swear. And because I can't see on my viewer that the Dragon Cast was actually on board, I just myself. So, yep, I suck. Flick, though, really nice response to the Power of Creation, right? And whether that was Power of Creation or Deep Freeze, the outcome is the same. Flick is just good in these circumstances.
Yep, just a good card. Solarian Prime draw nice and early for Viper, though. Should at least give him some hope moving forward. It's just this turn that needs dealing with, and I think really the big decision is Ray of Frost or no Ray of Frost. Or precisely how many Ray of Frost to cast this turn, more precisely, I guess.
I think, yeah, I'll probably go with 0, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, please do.
So normally, if I was just a general game of Hearthstone, I would like to just Ray of Frost the Flick, and then maybe either trade the Miscreant, or, you feeling it, just push face, play the Bone Wraith. Seems good. The issue I have is Solarian Prime thinks Conjurer's Calling is a aggressive spell you want to target enemies with. If it targets the Flick with a Conjurer's Calling, well, suddenly Solarian Prime isn't as one-sided as you really rely on it being. So that is why I personally would have got rid of the Flick away from this board if Viper is set on the Solarian next turn.
He's back in the game, ladies and gentlemen. That's a great point. Love it.
I see it happen scarily often, and again, maybe that's just me remembering every time it happens more than the other spells, but it's just a funny interaction because it is targetable. It's deemed like an aggressive and not a friendly spell.
Yeah.
Sit in silence. Wait for the payoff. Oh, that is an entrance. I want that music as I walk in a room or something. That would be great. So the real play, if Bozzdton's a true Hearthstone gamer, is to Shadow Step that Liadrin.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
It's sick. You can praise Galakron and Shadow Step.
Problem is this Spellbender, right? So yeah, he needs praise Galakron first. I also don't think it's a particularly real play, but there we go.
It's just free cards.
I have become one with the ball.
All right, let's dance. Okay, Bozzdton now knows what's up.
2 Spellbenders! Viper just cannot believe it. The worst Solarian I have ever seen.
Wait, was that multiple Spellbender? Oh, that was 2
it went Spellbender,
Spellbender,
and then the quest.
Okay, that's pretty great.
Oh, of all the secrets, it cast the same one, and you're like, okay, well, fine. And then it does it again.
He just played a War Golem that turn. That's essentially what happened.
Oh, that is bad. Okay, here's a question for you, Sal.
Yeah.
Do you like the Shadow Step more post-trade now because the Liadrin live? Is that more reasonable for you or not?
What are you trading it into?
Just whack the Bone Wraith.
The Bone Wraith? It's still a 4/6. Like, I just want my 4/6 in play.
You could just replay it this turn and have Shadow Step and praise Galakron back.
I guess.
It's only a 5-drop, isn't it? After the Shadow Step.
From nothing power.
Oh, another Shadow Step. We get Shiv as well. Look, Bozzdton does not have that many cards in hand, and one of them is a Spellbender.
Yep. So I think Shiv is probably the go-to here.
Oh, 1 mana off the Corrupted.
Yeah, just slightly out of range. Did we get through everything, Bozzdton? Okay, not sure if he decided he wanted the Spellbender on the board or not. He certainly picked it up as the rope was burning. Don't know whether that was a conscious decision or a rope decision. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
You get one of those a day. That's it.
I think it would make sense to hold on to it here.
I don't really know what it does on board right now, so...
Right, and it's just a cheap activator for the Faceless Corruptor, like if his board gets nuked somehow this turn, while still preserving a Lackey in hand, which opens up Togwaggle draws. He doesn't necessarily want to use the Lackey as his Faceless Corruptor activator.
Not bad going into turn 10 with not a lot of cards to work with.
Okay, now I'm starting to think about Shadow Stepping this.
At last.
Yep.
It's starting to pain me, Sottle, that it's still alive. It's bothering me. I'll give Bozzzton a call and be like, look, Bozzzton. Come on. It's a funny place.
How about a new life? How about a new life?
Kind of weird board to deal with, right? You just
Yeah.
ever just take 7?
Take 7? To preserve a frozen 4-1? I don't know about that.
I was wondering if you just don't interact with the elementals, since technically they both have to trade into Liadrin anyway.
Sure.
Fours on board.
Yeah, but doing this kind of protects... Right?
I mean, this looks like a... I don't know. It's okay. I wonder if Ray of Frost and Doomsayer is good enough here. With pink, obviously.
Yeah, looks pretty solid.
I don't think the Alex achieves much on this board, does it? It just dies.
Mm-hmm.
And it means with Viper not really committing too much to this board, it makes this arena much more appetizing, even if Doomsayer doesn't go off. So, Bozzzton expends resources to deal with this Doomsayer. Great! Then the Reno just gets better. Or does it? The Boom can still follow up.
Suddenly, this Shadow Step might have better uses.
Oh, we'll never agree with that.
Oh, there's just no value in the hand, though. Like, there's a Colossus of the Moon. Like, is that really a play?
There's Praise Galakrons. You want it? Until this Liadrin is dead, I will keep talking about it, just so you're aware.
Okay, duly noted.
So, you know, take it by surprise.
He's considering just dropping Colossus of the Moon to just get a 10-1 Divine Shield on board at the end of the turn.
Choose soon.
I mean, I guess. He is kind of conceding if, like, Viper just drops Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or regular Alexstrasza here, right?
Yeah, if he doesn't play the Colossus, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, sorry, I thought you meant with the Colossus. Like, no, that looks like a lot of damage, Sol. So yeah, you're completely right. Yeah. Colossus is going to give Bozzzton something to achieve here, but now Viper can just Reno this away. Or, if he's feeling truly spicy, he can Alexstrasza phase and just use the Ray of Frost on the Colossus.
Yeah. Actually, I wonder whether...
He has Conjurer's Call in the turn after the attack.
I do wonder how much this achieves, because he knows this Ray of Frost is here, right? Bozzzton knows the Ray of Frost is in hand, because it's the twin-spelled version. But I guess, like, when else are you going to have time to spend 10 mana on this thing? Probably never. Probably it's just best to just drop it down there.
I do like this from Viper, though. You flip a defensive situation into an offensive one, so it means that you can actually put Bozzzton on the back foot instead of going, oh, I'll get rid of the Colossus with Reno and then just give my opponent a completely empty board to work with.
Yep, 100% agree.
Much better. And the Conjure is just the icing on the cake, right?
Yeah, if he can find some solution to the 10-1 problem next turn and is able to Conjurer's Calling his own Alex, yeah, it's probably just going to be lights out at that point.
I actually wonder, with the limited resources Bozzzton seemingly has access to, based on Viper's knowledge, if he could ever even just pick and trade the Alex and be okay with it. You know what I mean? And just say, okay, I have Reno, I have Box, I have Conjurers for another minion if I draw one soon.
Yeah.
But I think Bozzzton very clearly does not have much, right? Because even...
Oh, sorry. Rush Lackey. Illegal. Actually illegal.
Oh, wait, that is actually...
Shadow Step, Colossus of the Moon, Rush Lackey.
Not as cool as the Adrian, but cool enough.
No, see, this is way cooler because it also has the benefit of actually being good.
Nope. Truly cool things are actually not good.
Ah, is that where I've been going wrong all these years?
Yeah, lesson to learn, a young apprentice.
Okay. The fact that Reno is there to cut it all away does lessen some of the hype as well. So there you go.
Probably the best one. Okay, not the best draw he could have got, but based on the fact that Bozzzton could just double 5-drop here, one of which is Boom Pistol, is actually a really solid top deck, if not the best. Reno does take the wheel at this point.
Easiest box of my life. Ooh, that's going to be a lot of minions biting the dust more often than not. Yeah.
Oh! Now Grand Slam! The best card in the game!
Order.
Yes! The Arcane shot the 5-1.
Oh, Raven.
Yeah, Shadow of
Raven,
Death!
can
It's
this
the
turn
best
get
day ever!
any more exciting for you?
I'm a Viper fan now because that happened, and the Adrian was not Shadow.
Incredible.
Incredible. Not much you can do versus a box that strong. Devoted Maniac, I'll say, unlikely to get the job done, even with 2 Kobold Lackeys, and he is just facing down Lethal, especially because he doesn't know what these secrets are, and bamboozle. All the best things in the game happening right now.
Yeah, and they're just 4-drops, so yeah, good luck with that. Oh, Baron Geddon, though. Okay. Nope, no, that sucks.
I was going to say, he leaves it up to do the self-damage and help clear the board. He takes 7 and dies.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave it up. There's 2 Cleft Hoofs on the board and he dies.
I wonder.
Yeah, that is all very unfortunate.
Choose soon.
That's just guaranteed lethal at that point, right? Oh no, he's still 1 off because he
He's 1 off because he
can.
kept it.
Yeah, but he's still 1 off.
Dude, the misdirections have been on point today. Alright.
Not live
That's
though.
not... Yeah,
The
shadows. Yeah.
Scrap shot to the face is going to get the job done though. Viper takes game number 1 over Bozzzton in quite ridiculous fashion. And honestly, after the deep analysis we go into of that game, my real question is, who Shadow Step the Adrian?
I don't, like, genuinely, I don't think it makes a difference. I think, like, there was turns to do it where it was actively bad because you're just reducing your board size. The one turn where maybe you can think about it is the turn where he played the Colossus of the Moon, but I think the Colossus of the Moon was correct, not because it actually achieved anything on board, per se, because even if Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or regular Alexstrasza was there, Bozzzton always knows there's the Ray of Frost to freeze it out anyway, so it doesn't actually achieve anything. But more importantly, like, it cost 10, and he just drew Boom Pistol. So he's never going to have the opportunity to be playing Colossus of the Moon again, because he's going to spend the rest of the game playing Boom Pistol Bully and Shadow Stepping it and yada, yada, yada. That's the plan. So I think that was the only turn where maybe Shadow Step the Adrian could have come in, and Colossus of the Moon was better on that turn. So I'm sorry, Raven. You're just going to have to make do with a Grand Slam and a Shadows in the deck.
I'm okay
keep me
with
satisfied
it,
for this game.
It hurts me a little bit, but I think the deserving player won that game. mainly because the Nat Grand Slam was played by the winner. But anyway, jokes aside, I'm joking, of course. Bozzzton looks like he's going to be moving over to his warrior going into this game, and another player who's holding out on Terran Gorfney settle, and the egg package as well. So there's I feel like the newer evolutions of this deck, although there is the Grommash Hellscream in there, are really going to these eggs and the Terran as the first cuts as the deck needs space to continue to evolve.
Yeah, and it seems to be the case with just about every archetype we have right now. It's almost as if the archetypes have archetypes themselves. Like, even you get down to the point of what we're naming a deck, even within that deck archetype, there's like 2 or 3 variations that actually play out significantly different in some matchups. You know, you look at the Zoo and the Charge Zoo, you look at Egg Warrior and the No Egg Warrior. You know, it seems to permeate through. Even now Rogue on Viper's side, Stealth Rogue, Galakron Rogue, Secret Rogue, Highlander Rogue. You know, all of these things have a very similar game plan, but are executing them slightly differently with a few different card choices.
Yeah, and it's what makes me excited about the meta, honestly. I know everyone's allowed to like and dislike whatever meta they want, but I feel like we've never really had a moment in Hearthstone that's quite like this, where there's still no decks really been narrowed down into like the archetype. There's continued evolution week on week. That's probably partly a nod as well to the very quick couple of sets of nerfs we had recently, which has helped out with that. But even now, look, we're like 2-3 weeks in with no real changes, and I think there's still tons of change to go into these archetypes and deck lists.
Right.
In the meantime, though, Warrior has left up, and I feel like one of the stories of the weekend is the fact that Warrior does get left up and wins. So, do we just put Bozzzton at 1-1 here? But leading to an actual real question, how do you think Rogue does here, and what's Viper's game plan to beat this Warrior?
Cry. I don't know. This I really feel like this matchup.
Is it that bad, do you feel?
It's pretty bad as far as I'm concerned. Like, I just feel like this Warrior deck does everything Rogue can do, but slightly better. Right? Like, you know, Rogue needs to mess about in the early game, and then maybe they get the opportunity to draw a bunch of cards. Well, Warrior can do that with just huge Battle Rage turns anyway. They can cheat big minions into play for 0 mana. Well, Warrior can do that with Blood Boil Brute. They're more aggressive early, they're more aggressive late. They have huge swings of health gain, which Rogue doesn't have if it ever comes down to a race. Like, I think it's just so hard to pick this strategy apart from the Rogue side, in my experience.
So all the pressure really on Viper here to beat back some of the aggression and combo potential from Bozzzton. Especially because he's not really got off to a fantastically quick start. He did mulligan away Spy Mistress as well. He didn't put that in his opening hand. But now he does have Seal Fate, have Evil Miscreant, the Dirty Tricks into Blackjack Stunner on demand, and now maybe the Ambush instead. They just have options. And we did see how successful bouncing even early minions is versus Warrior. So I wonder, for example, if we see a secret into bouncing the egg now, make it a 4 cost.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a different answer to that question, I guess just do what Tice did earlier, which was, you know, just play out his hand. He had 0 value the entire game, and just played out his hand super quickly, bounced a bunch of minions back into hand with Blackjack Stunner early on, and just, you know, kept drawing just enough just to keep him going. Just really hit 0 of the big rogue bombs at any point throughout the entire game.
I wonder.
I think especially with this hand from Viper, it looks like it's worth a shot. Could potentially coin into Shield of Galakron next turn, if he did the Blackjack this time.
Choose soon.
I'm going to Seal Fate this instead. What this does potentially as well is this egg is only a threat if it is buffed in terms of attack. And I guess Viper might be thinking, well, if that happens, then I'll just bounce it, right? Because then it actually uses up the buff as well, respect. Whether that's an Inner Rage, or a Rampage, or whatever. Or maybe that's actually will turn out better in the long run to not do it quite yet.
You like my invention?
Yeah, and if it gets buffed, then there's no way you can Seal Fate it anyway, right? So you might as well just use up that card on something else. Very weak outcome from the Faceless Lackey here from Bozzzton, and his hand is a little bit stuck right now. Again, he's on that Evolve Lackey life, which is generally not where you want to be in this deck unless you're going to use it on exactly Blood Boil Brute. Because apart from that, generally you have a lot of minions that you've buffed with Rampage, so they're overstatted, or are specifically being played because they are that exact minion, like Risky Skipper, Armor Smith, so on. Like, it's kind of rare that you want to evolve minions in this deck a lot of the time.
It's normally just other lackeys, isn't it? Right? Like,
Yep.
It's just, oh, I've got this Faceless Lackey on board. Whatever, let's make it a 2-drop.
Yep.
In the meantime, though, Viper can go for even more value here by comboing this Evil Miscreant. The only thing you just have to consider is his hand is getting a little bit full. And although that's never a horrible problem to have, he's all the cards, a lot of the time, he has generate things as well. So there's only really the secrets and the stunner that actually stay used up, if that makes sense.
Choose soon.
And the coin.
Oh, up to no good. Me too. Nothing.
And I can see in the approach to this matchup, actually, secrets as a whole just really being used to proc stunners on the man, and the effect of the actual secret being secondary bonus.
Still confuses me so much the way some players play. Like that turn, Viper took, what, 80% of his turn just deciding he was going to play Miscreant. And then he played Miscreant, and lackeys generally give you a lot of options. So he then had like 10 seconds to decide which lackeys he wanted to play, and then which spells he wanted to discover off his spell lackeys.
Right.
Like, why do people choose to ration out their decisions like that? It's so lopsided. Bugs me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you don't just absolutely love watching me play Sol, because I just, as soon as my turn starts, those green cards get played.
Yeah, you give the same amount of weight of thought to all of your decisions, which is 0.
Exactly. Yep. Is it playable? Does it look like it could deal damage to face? Okay, lock it in, go. End turn. I do take your point seriously, though, because there's not only the branching paths of what lackeys you get, and that you've got to trade it off versus, okay, not only if this is obviously a Theron like it's another Discover, but do I want to rush this turn? Do I want to deal damage? What do I want to buff health-wise? You are right, it is just option after option. Now. I think this may be the turn that the stunner gets absolutely insane work done.
Agreed.
If you bounce Terran, it of course loses the Death Rattle egg it has in itself. But also, you make Terran a 5 cost, and Terran is a little bit clunky sometimes to actually play and have a good time with it anyway. At 5, well, yeah, that's just a problem half the time, right? And I don't think Viper really wants to deal with this multi-layered board right now because of the Death Rattle into Minion.
Yes.
It's a bit too many layers of frustration.
Because of that dynamic that you describe, I do kind of like the way that Bozzzton played it, though. He hasn't like tried to go for some nutty Terran further down the line. He just kind of played it the first time it was good. If it does get sapped, no big deal, you know.
And the combo with Bamboozle here as well, being the secret of choice, is also nice. And the extra bonus being that if your opponent has a weapon, then they really have to do that consideration trade-off of whether they swing the weapon in first or whether they swing the minion in first. Do they value their own health, or are they okay with their minion just getting insta-killed? Depending on what they trade into, which is a mystery. So definitely like the Bamboozle with the board over the Dirty Tricks for more cards that Viper does really.
Yeah, Bozzzton's hand is just kind of stalled out a little bit now. Just double Skipper, but not really the minions that he needs to pop off with, and nor any great payoff. Get a Blood Boil Brute down in reasonable fashion, but still. It's not looking ideal when he has this secret mess to deal with first. The threat of ambush, the threat of dirty tricks. That's a pretty good outcome, though.
Yeah, for a 6 drop, definitely. Not only because of its low attack, but its low health means it's very killable. If it was a 3-6, then even though, yeah, it doesn't do tons of damage, which is what you first look at when a bamboozle happens, but also, like, it's a minion that sticks around. Whereas in this case now, the big problem that Viper has is this is a pretty threatening board. And even if he can do some damage to it, if he doesn't kill this Blood Boil, Bozzzton does have that Witchy Lackey to maybe cash in on it if Viper puts it low as a 2-turn setup.
Yep. And this is kind of illustrating my point at the start about the matchup, is it feels like Viper's just been comfortably in control this entire matchup. Would you agree with that? Like, up until this point, it seemed like it was Viper's game?
I think that's fair, yeah. That's fair.
And then just one turn, Bozzzton just played some cards, and now look at this mess. Like, suddenly, how do you deal with this even as Rogue?
I might need longer than a few minutes to work that out, so
Yeah.
I don't know is my answer, if you'll accept.
I will. As soon as this one swing turn happens, which, you know, isn't even... Like, this was a B-tier swing turn as far as this warrior deck goes. And once this happens, you're just constantly under the threat of Korkron combo or Grom Inner Rage, just the entire game, as soon as they get to hit you with minions once. Just a bad time to be a rogue.
Home in the shadows.
This is why I generally wonder if this week we saw a little bit of a symptom of just the player base in general giving Rogue a bit too much credit, maybe. You know, it's easy to say when we've seen Rogue lose a lot this weekend, but there's been a lot of high-level players putting consideration to what they submit this week, and maybe this was just a week where a fair few of them just missed it. Now, is this ever, in a weird way, a decent Terran? You can egg, go face, and then Terran.
I just want my brute.
I wonder.
Have a slightly bigger brute.
Well, but I have a brute now.
Right into my trap.
Look, it's dead to the ambush guy.
I guess that is true now, yeah.
Then you Terran
Play
it and
the
you
egg.
go, okay, enjoy your poison, friend.
That's fair. Mega Wind Fury.
Does he have to rampage this armor?
It's going to rampage and trade.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. No.
Wait, was that face?
He just went face.
Oh, yeah, it's because he just needs one more turn, right? He gets to turn 9 and then just risks the RPG. Is that, I'm guessing, the immediate plan for Bozzzton?
Yeah, no, that also seems very valid. I think you could argue that both ways, of just protecting a 6/6 on the board. Rogue can't really deal with it. I guess they can just have exactly flick there, which messes with your plan if you don't go face. So yeah, on balance, face, probably the right plan. Who really cares about this 2-3?
Well, someone can. Yes, this is the issue, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Of like the question of, well, it was a whole turn away. I think I would have liked that attack much more if it was more of a direct setup.
Yeah.
Still, Tom would still be the problem.
And the hand is now just a little bit stuck.
Is it? I was thinking, is it ever like, it can't be skip or anything, can it?
That's what I've been looking at as well.
What now?
It's not great, I'll tell you that much.
I was the first to know.
This looks just like the best line. The problem with that turn is that every card in your hand gets better later. So obviously, if you don't Terran there, you have the opportunity to have like a skipper, Terran, Bloodsworn, Mercenary kind of turn, where you just duplicate your Terran and have an enormous board. You could also just choose to Grom that turn, but obviously your Grom is potentially your lethal blow with the risky skipper on the following turn. Bloodsworn Mercenary, same deal. You can just about use it there, but it seems to get better later on. So I think all things considered, just forget about all the complicated stuff and focus on the simple stuff, which is how do you set up lethal? I think the best way to set up lethal is what Bozzzton did, which is just put a bunch of damage into play that can trade with the taunt, and then risky skipper and Grom is the last point of AoE that he needs to clear out the shield of Galakron and go face.
Yeah, and in respect to Viper, probably considering that, yes, he is dead to many, many things here, does he just go for this evasive Draconid and say that's got to be it? Got to be enough? Because everything else in his hand does not have taunt.
Agreed.
Can't heal. No Galakron there. To even say I'll take 5 armor and some card draw. I do think it's a fairly straightforward opponent here.
Your feeble magic amuses.
Yeah, you can see how much that hurts Bozzzton to see. Bozzzton now can get popping with this Bloodsworn Mercenary, though, even if he does not have lethal on this turn, which he does not.
Let's go big Terran plays.
Mm-hmm. He still preserves 1 skipper plus 1 Grom in his hand for the lethal push.
Do you ever think
generates an enormous board.
Double skipper before him? Can he clear with double skipper?
No, I don't think so. I think it's more important to just make... You don't have a Grom activator then, right? If
You don't need one if you have a big board and your opponent's on 7.
Sure.
I was just wondering if he could actually clear instead. Don't think he could have, though. Not sure now. Turn happened too fast.
Yeah, double skipper's never
right?
quite as good as you think it is, though, because like you play the first one, you play the second one, that procs once, and then you play one other minion, it procs 2 more times, and then both skippers are dead. So you don't actually get that much extra out of the second skipper in most situations.
Yeah, you get like 1 double proc, right?
Yeah.
Is the thing you count the most as whether it's good or not. Does a double proc help you? And I was just wondering, with obviously the Draconid on 2 health, if an extra proc or anything would have pushed him over the edge in terms of getting rid of the taunt. And with this board, like Grom face without activator seems fine.
Yeah.
But still Bozzzton putting Viper in a bit of a tricky spot here. Shadows. Candle Breath is cheaper. Not sure what you can draw. Makes sense. We're just gonna go fishing. Oh, gonna go for the Titan package. Oh, value trader ball.
Oh, that's just funny.
Yep, and without even needing the skipper in the end.
I'll show you who's boss.
That is just going to be lethal there for Bozzzton, and as is just going to be like the ongoing theme. Sorry, Warrior plays a game, Warrior wins a game. Bozzzton going to take it, and even this series up to a 1-1 score between these 2 players. Bit of a close one there. I feel like Viper just never really had a swing turn to get going. He didn't hit that rogue Galakron. He didn't get Togwaggle to go for the wand. None of that happened, right? It was always for the whole game, no matter how late it was. Viper just going, I need to just about survive. I need to just about survive. And he was close, but the setup eventually got there with that crop.
So it just amused me to hear a bit of a close one where like Bozzzton ended that game with like 58 health and a massive board that still had death rattles on it. Like I understand what you're saying for sure, but I think it looks deceptively close, and it really wasn't overall.
Right.
Bozzzton did all of that without battle rage essentially as well in that matchup.
It's true.
So I think it's pretty tough to contend with from the rogue side. Viper's draw wasn't exactly premium either, but still, I think that is a pretty solid matchup for the Warrior in most regards. And you can kind of see why, because there was a large period of that where you're like, oh, Bozzzton's in trouble here. Like, there's some pressure coming through from Viper. And just 1 turn. Just never look back from that point. Just 1 turn.
Yeah, and again, I feel like this weekend has really just drilled on the power of just how good Grom is in the deck right now, because it allows you to make game plans like that. So imagine if Bozzzton didn't, if no one was playing Grom, Bozzzton was like, okay, I can burst him if I draw Corcoran, Bloodsworn, Inner Rage, you know, and so it's just not really going to happen most of the time, especially as you mentioned, no Battle Rage is that game. So
Yeah.
it does open up just some very straightforward setups for lethal, but it's all. Looks like we are getting ready for your favorite deck ever right now, which is going to be the Galakrond Priest from Bozzzton.
Don't really know how to respond to that. It kind of is and it isn't. I do actually enjoy playing this deck. The more I've practiced it and tried to understand what it's really capable of. And certainly though, this matchup I do find particularly fascinating. I think Viper, who is a real student of the game, I'll be interested to see what his approach to this matchup was. Because if you didn't see APAC before us today, there was a really, really interesting game with Shaxi, where he set out in a way where it looked like he was going to be successful in playing a ultimate late game outvalue fatigue the priest kind of game plan, which up until that moment I didn't really think was possible in my experience from both sides. But we didn't actually quite get to see whether he was going to be able to realize that game plan or not, if it actually did go all the way to fatigue. So I do think the question is still a little bit up in the air.
Yeah, we get to see how it plays out now. I know the players will talk about, as you mentioned, the wand. Okay, well, sure. The wand with the Morozond combos as well. So yeah, I'm with you. I know Viper approaches Rogue and approaches Hearthstone in very much his own way, and maybe that's going to be a huge benefit to him in a matchup like this.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's not give Priest a Shadow Step. That seems like a bad starting point.
The future is clear. Your demise be near.
And no surprises coming out from the Pharaoh Cat for Bozzzton now. He's well aware of what that gave Viper.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the way his hand looks, Shield of Galakrond is just fine. Start proccing his own Galakrond. Because Time Rip, although a 5-drop, isn't one that you really count on using on turn 5 in most matchups.
Yeah.
I think just, playing a 4-5 taunt, rocking Galakrond. Seems good to me. The Miscreant instead goes for some of that lackey value.
Yeah, Miscreant was my alternate choice. I wonder if this means Bozzzton might just be playing his Fate Weaver on curve. Because, problem number one is this Lore Walker Cho right now. His hand is entirely spells, and then those 2 minions on the right-hand side. So that Lore Walker Cho is a huge mess for him right now. The Shielded Galakrond pick would have allowed him to get a Fate Weaver active, so he discounts his hand. But, does any of that mean anything if there's still this Lore Walker Cho hanging around on board? So I'm curious if Bozzzton is just going to try and get on board with minions. But he got the news that Viper was going to play a 4-2 Reborn this turn, right? He's almost certain that is the play based on what he saw from that information. So I think he's just kind of in a weird position overall. But yeah, I do like this attempt at least to just play the 3-6 and just try and contest some of the board this way. We've had it all today, Raven. Puzzle boxes, just play your curve and kill them on 8 with Grom in a rage. Now the old meme Lore Walker Cho's come out as well.
There is, I know I talk about how much I like the meta at the moment, but there is a lot going on in Hearthstone right now. If you are just getting back into the game for whatever reason, you picked a spicy moment, because you can do all sorts. I did wonder here when one player was just going to decide that it's fine to have spells, because even then, I was wondering, is coin just fine to give to your opponent? Because they end up just giving it you back most of the time anyway. And who benefits more from the coin? Because if you take an evil Miscreant, you could have coined out the Miscreant there. It's interesting to consider. Obviously, Bozzzton won't want to give Viper cards like Apotheosis and probably even Death and Rip. But I think coin, if when it's very likely it just comes back to you quickly anyway, would have been okay. Viper going for the make my opponent overdraw with this Cho strategy.
Hand is too full.
And the payoff is?
Nice. Very, very nice indeed. I do actually like this plan, now that I think about it from Viper. Because it kind of goes to what you were just saying, with the, like, you know, if I give him spells, he kind of has to give them back to me. You know, Viper will quite happily take back his backstab and his shadow step in this position, and any other spells that Bozzzton might need to hand dump here to be able to make space. I actually really like this plan from Viper, because
the key
puts
point
Bozzzton
is
in a really awkward spot.
It keeps seeming unlikely that Cho even dies, right? Because what cards does Priest have to kill Cho without minions sticking?
Yeah, time
Not
rip.
that many, honestly. Yeah, no, but that's what I mean, right? But then great, you get a time rip, and they spend a whole turn killing a Cho.
Yep.
Great. Right. Now Bozzzton just has to give him a card back, right? But then he knows if he gives him... Should Bozzzton have actually played a minion for overdraw again?
Played him, what, just tempoed Miscreant as a 1/4?
But the problem now is any spell he gives Viper, Viper's just going to give it him back and he just overdraws. You know what I mean? It's like maybe that was worth the Miscreant. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Game's weird.
I mean, if he gives him backstab, he can't give backstab back without backstabbing his own Cho, which then I don't think Viper would want to do that, because suddenly then it's like Breath of the Infinite and stuff can clear, right?
Yeah, but he knows Viper has minions, right?
Yeah.
He knows he's got lackeys. He knows he's got a Miscreant, which he can proc without casting a spell, probably. Well, yeah, because he's got lackey.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, for the purpose of Viper giving the spell back to fill up Bozzzton's hand and overdraw another card, backstab isn't something that Viper was likely to cast that turn.
Right, but I guess my point is, it's always castable if Viper ever wants him to overdraw, because he has throwaway minions like lackeys he can just backstab, right?
Yeah, no, that is true, and he might still end up backstabbing a lackey at the end.
That's
of
what
this
I
turn.
mean, right? He can.
Yeah.
It's not like backstab ruins his plans. He just goes,
Yeah.
there you go, out the back. And that's what I was saying. It sucks, but maybe Bozzzton had to just play an evil Miscreant. Now he's just overdrawing again.
This game's dumb.
At least now he can play the 2-drop. But he is also just dying. Because with all this havoc, Bozzzton's not actually playing the game.
Yep.
I wonder.
This has been too much today, Sol.
It's been a pretty weird one.
Hmm. And also looking at this, isn't Miscreant just like the worst thing Bozzzton could have picked because it generates the most?
Yeah, I mean that is actually a fair point.
I'm not really having a go at Bozzzton by any means. It's just it's like massive arsehole. Oh my.
Count your blessings.
Buff the Doomsayer, you want this Cho to finally die. Oh. How many spells can Viper cast? I do think, so coming back to semi-serious mode right now, Viper needs to right at this point decide whether he wants to try and go for some kind of super aggressive lethal push, or whether he wants to try and play a slower, slightly longer
He's
game.
just gonna keep
Just doing it. He's just doing it. I wish he had a secret. Oh. He could give him the card draw. Imagine he gave Bozzzton a card draw secret, and then blackjack to minion.
Too soon.
That's a, yep, backstab, no surprise. That puts Bozzzton back up at 10. Oh, I absolutely love this game of Hearthstone right now. And the evolve is always going to be good. Well, most of the time, because, yep, that was a very low value evolve minion, the one beforehand. Always forget the name of the gnome.
The thing before, Stowaway.
Yeah. That's it, yeah.
Hand is too full.
That would have been nice for the Armored Goon, wouldn't it?
It sure would. My only slight concern now is that he's feeding him, like, Seal of Fates. It's not just backstabs anymore. Like, Seal of Fate is a Seal Fate is a pretty good card for Bozzzton's deck.
Say that, Sol, but all Viper's really doing is setting up lethal by giving himself more Seal Fate so he can proc his Galakron and kill him with Claw.
Yeah. I guess that's true. I guess it's just an awkward card to dump as well because it adds a lackey to your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, it adds in, or I guess a priest minion in the case of Bozzzton, which is even more awkward to dump.
This backstab has done unlimited amount of damage this game, hasn't it? If you imagine this is just one backstab being passed around.
Yeah.
It's probably done like 10 plus damage right now. There's Apotheosis though.
Uh-huh.
I really want to see Apotheosis cast on the Cho.
Battle Cho. So this is what I wondered about, is at the point where Bozzzton does just say, okay, enough of this, just have all of my spells. Do they actually do anything for Viper?
He could just time rip this Miscreant and then backstab his own thing in Apotheosis and push with Battle Cho. Maybe evolves into Bro at that point. So if Viper's going to go silly and keep with this burn plan, he would need to cast 3 spells. There's one.
He's going to Apotheosis
he's gonna
Shadow
kill it.
of Death, the Miscreant. Okay. Alright, I love, however, this is the really important part of the turn. There is now 1 attack, or 2 attack, on this Lore Walker Cho. Which is important because now Viper has control of when exactly he wants this Lore Walker Cho to die. And Bozzzton has to respect that with any minions that he plays. Because if he just feeds Viper a bunch of high-quality spells, Viper can then choose to just kill off his own Lore Walker Cho into a minion that gets played, and then just never get them back.
Free cast. Yep. And also, can we just get a Galakron check? Because believe it or not, I've lost track of a few things in this game.
Yeah, so this is the next point I was coming to. Also, Viper is fully invoked. He's on 5 right now, so he's fully invoked. So I think Bozzzton is also aware of that, and that's why we saw kind of like the counter mill play from Bozzzton on the previous turn, where he threw a bunch of spells into Viper's hand. Because Bozzzton knows if Viper's hand is full of garbage, he can't Galakron, because he's just going to burn like 4 cards off the top of his deck.
New tricks.
I'm not going to lie, I clutched my chair a little bit more than as I see a Faceless Manipulator played in this matchup. Faceless Manipulator, Faceless Lackey. I was like, what are we playing with now? Doomsday, another Cho?
I mean, screw it. Just Shadow Step the Grizzled Wizard. And just replay it, just be a rogue. It's fun. I mean, that's just where we are. It's just where we are this game. Finally! He blinks! He loses the game of Cho Chicken.
So now, Viper though just gets to just free cast these Galakron, draw 100 cards, make them cost 0, and really turn up the heat. And after all this messing about, does Bozzzton have what it takes to actually put a stop to this turn? Ooh, there's Dirty Tricks. Oh! He just bounced the 2 minions back.
Yeah, he does need to keep the board clear because he knows that Bozzzton has a million Apotheosis available, having given him 1 back, and still has the natural 1 in his deck. Does Bozzzton play the Pyromancer? I'm assuming he does, but it's been a
I
long
think it's
time
a
since
one-off.
I looked at the list.
I will
Yeah, one copy of
quadruple check.
Pyromancer. Yeah, sure.
Darkness wanes.
Horrify me if that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, this Aeon Reaver from Bozzzton is going to be a huge answer to rank lead.
It is. It's also a ton of mana to spend, though, when your opponent's already smacking you in the face with a 5-2 claw, and there's a 4-2 stealth minion in play as well.
Yeah.
On the Kronks! Oh, Kronks down. I'm going to go on a limb and say Bozzzton has not enjoyed this game of Hearthstone very much.
Oh, honestly, Bozzzton's probably not enjoyed this series of Hearthstone.
Alright.
Mass Resurrect.
10 quid who can tell me what Mass Resurrection does right now, because I have no idea.
Doesn't summon show. So there you go, I told you what it did.
Okay. It's just some lackeys and a Fate Weaver, Madame Lazul, Evil Miscreant? Question mark?
Your future is known.
Now, Sol, just in case this game wasn't spicy enough,
Yeah.
and Nara and Bamboozle time.
Mm-hmm.
What about?
Probably fair to start with Draconic Lackey. I'm not sure where Viper is on his deck list, but for example, Alexstrasza would be insane. A lot of the big dragons would just be insane. Onyxia seems good enough, honestly, right now.
Yeah. Does still have a Togwaggle available, so there's an outside chance that some stupid Malagos nonsense does happen with the new 0 mana cards that come out, but yeah, overall, Onyxia just seems far more solid.
Yep, and although he could Blackjack Stunner, it might be a bit oh wait, he's... Oh, I wonder if Blackjack Stunner is actually really good here, right?
If you play Onyxia, you have to hit the 4/4 with your weapon, right?
But you could have stunned first.
He doesn't... Oh, you want to play ambush and the stun? Yeah, sure.
Because
That seems
although,
fine.
yes, there is the replayability to kill Onyxia, you have a effectively 6 damage on board plus the weapon for 11. And obviously it wouldn't have been direct lethal, but if your opponent's spending 8 mana to kill just the 8/8, maybe that's worth. Maybe this is more consistently an out because it guarantees the 8/8 doesn't 100% die.
Yeah, that's
But
the
just,
problem,
just a consideration, that's all. Just a thought that sometimes your opponent spending a lot of mana is still good enough.
Yeah. I think as long as you hit the 4/4 here, then I'd like this play. Again, if you don't hit the 4/4, you know your 8/8 100% dies because you know your opponent has a backstab and apotheosis in their hand because you gave them to them. So that's 8/8 dead and Bozzzton heals for 6 for the sake of you just going face for 5. It's just not good.
Yep, the key thing for Viper here is just 100% knowing the apotheosis is available, which means Viper will never want to let Bozzzton have a minion pick. There is only really Pyromancer, which is the key recovery. Is that just another Aeon Reaver?
Yep.
Maybe that one's worth a bounce, depending on what the draw is.
Yeah, and this is the thing. If Viper wants to keep up this aggression, he does just have to continue to clear every single minion, and that's a very frustrating thing to have to do when you are playing aggressively. So,
One of
Paladin
the reasons
Secret.
why... Probably counter, right? But it's one of the reasons why I keep sort of latching onto the stunner, is that it costs 0 mana and 1 board space.
Yeah.
To bounce, as opposed to damage. to deal with a minion. And I think especially now, Viper's not presenting too many big minions that are really going to get punished by the second replay of Aeon Reaver, which means I really like it.
But he also has, like I say, this is a long-term problem. He has to continue to remove minions every turn. And Blackjack Stunner is a universal solution to that problem.
Don't let the door hit.
Whereas, you know, Seal of Fate, swinging his dagger into a minion, all of those other things that he can use are more situational. So maybe he should get all those used first before using the stunner.
I think he's planning on finishing this game quicker than that's a problem though. We get a secret check because the reason why that backstab came down is because I believe there's an ambush live, and if the board is full, ambush will not.
Yeah, there's also a Dirty Tricks live, which would be overdraw territory if there was still that many cards in hand. So there's Dirty Tricks, Counterspell, Ambush, Eye for an Eye, and Redemption.
So basically a very frustrating and hard to deal with board is what Viper's created with this secret barrier.
I will act as your scale.
This is no good. Bozzzton knows there's a time rip. Yep.
Apotheosis doesn't cut it. What Bozzzton would not do for a Pyromancer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even because he could actually Pyromancer, Apotheosis, and then just Apotheosis again to go twice if there was enough health on the board, obviously, to gain the heal benefit. It's 8. Base. He probably ends up trading one minion away so we can play a Miscreant. Let's start off with Seal of Fate as well, if he wants to, all hero power. A lot of openings here, but I think regardless, there's almost certainly a time rip coming down. So maybe he just starts with that, see what luck he has from there. Also, in case you don't know, you can only have 5 secrets active at a time.
Yeah.
So it's not like Viper's really going to be able to pop off with this secret plan with an army.
Again, has to respect every single minion. And yeah, it's the Pyro draw, isn't it? It's just what it comes down to.
Yep. Didn't look like it.
It was not it. That is another Mind Flare Carge. Actually, this is Wretched Reclaimer next to it, isn't it? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, does he have a secret now? Just because he could have, like, Mind Flayed Hanar, then Wretched Reclaimer, and then Secret Chain.
Nice! The lackey out! I love it! I love it. No. Alright.
Not going to be good enough. What a game that was. And Lorewalker Cho has a lot to answer for in that game specifically. But Viper, yeah, I think that's, instead of a look of exhilaration at winning a game of Hearthstone in this tournament, that was a look of relief going, glad that one's over, because that was about to boil my brain. Crazy series so far between these two players.
Yeah, it was. I honestly don't remember the last time I was as confused during a game of Hearthstone as I was during that one. Not pretty good handle on what's going on, but the different lines there, like, who is the Cho good for, who is the Cho bad for, whose spells benefit more for each player when both players are playing Galakron and you're passing invoke spells back and forth. Who was it more important to not have cards in their hands, like Bozzzton, who was burning every turn, or Viper that was trying to empty his hand so he could Galakrons? Like, everything was a complete mess that entire game, and it was just an innocuous looking, like, turn 2 or turn 3 or whatever, Faceless Lackey on the board into Lorewalker Cho, and then just all hell broke loose from there.
I will say, from what is obviously a crazy game of Hearthstone, right? I think Viper piloted that very well. He was giving Bozzzton the horrible, awkward turns, giving the backstabs back and forth, even just realizing that that's something he could consider, never mind even do, is good. But the fact he executed it in a fairly stable fashion really just led him to winning that game. Unfortunately for Bozzzton, he couldn't quite get hold of any sort of free turns to make a big difference. Viper didn't let him stick the minion. I do think Viper really did just really take a hold of that weird situation and made it work for him, which is why he won the game.
Yeah. Yeah, the milling cards there is like so next level, because obviously like milling cards is something that, you know, mediocre and more casual players are quite obsessed with. They think it's like a terrible thing if it happens, so they'll like always burn cards from the opponent. They'll always play around burning cards themselves. So then at a higher level, you learn that that's not necessarily a big deal. You don't have to worry about burning cards all that often. So then to go then higher level and realize that in that spot it was actually beneficial to keep burning cards because there was really no opportunity cost for him in doing so, I think is really impressive there.
A really crazy but cool game overall. And now we're going to go to game number 4 here. Viper, if he takes a win with this Warrior, which I've been talking about all day, that he'll just win all the time. He is going to win this series and finish his weekend 2-0. If he doesn't, he's going to continue. Bozzzton is going to be on this Priest. And did you run in too much Warrior when you were practicing Priest at all?
I did. I love this matchup. It makes me happy.
As Priest, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem to be a very, very solid matchup from the Priest side.
I think it really just come down to Priest having the answers to some of the early pressure that Warrior can do, but also just the sheer amount of heal makes it actually quite difficult to even finish the game as Warrior.
Yeah, precisely. Warrior is such a multi-pronged threat in terms of, they can beat you on board, they can beat you on resources, they can beat you on burst damage. Well, Priest has Breath of the Infinite and Time Rip and Shadow Madness, which is an insane card in this matchup in a lot of positions. To deal with all the board stuff. They have infinite resource generation to deal with the resource problem, and they have infinite healing to deal with the healing problem. So they just kind of have all of those bases checked, and it does seem to be a pretty strong matchup for the Priest.
It's important, though, to know that Warrior is not the best deck in the game for just no reason, right? Even in its tougher matchups, I feel like it's got a solid chance.
Job's done.
Time card. At least it's going to be able to kill off this Galaxy vote. Start getting those goals.
It's looking like a good old-fashioned hero power and emote turn. And I do mean hero power.
Yeah, you do mean actually playing it. Bozzzton is pretty fairly considering playing Mind Flayer. It's definitely one of the more cute cards in the matchup, and it doesn't die to the weapon swing.
He could just have a 110 inside that thing next turn if Viper plays on curve.
Yeah. But I think it is fair to just consider with the state he's in right now.
Sure.
I think the outcome is to not do it, but...
So Bozzzton chose not to heal his opponent that turn, which is actually a real, genuine decision point. I think, led to mostly because he has a weapon equipped, so he's capable of injuring himself quite quickly again. Generally, the spots you should look out for healing the Warrior back to full health is when they're at 28 or 29, but they've already stacked some armor up on top of that. Then it gets very difficult for them to injure themselves again. So you should look out for spots to heal them back up to 30, just because it reduces the power of Battle Rage.
For example, now with an Armor Smith, you could think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the weird things about Fate Weaver in this deck, isn't it? It doesn't often actually go off, for me at least when I've played, because it's not like you heavily invoke before turn 4 regularly. But for me, it's just a good enough minion to just play as a 3-6. And it has side benefits, of course, of like proccing their Breath of the Infinite.
I think I'd be willing to play off curve here if I was Bozzzton, though. I think the Fate Weaver will get value because you do have the double invoke in hand already, and just Armor Smith is a pretty solid target to get inside this Mind Flayer. Bozzzton disagrees though. He's just playing his biggest minion, spending his mana. Hard to argue.
Yeah, and like I said, that the health is such a nice selling point in this matchup as well, specifically. Just having a 6 health thing on the board makes it difficult to be killed off in a reasonable fashion. Now he can get a blood bring in the Mind Flayer.
Certainly is a big boy. Shadow Madness
actually-
plus Shadow Word Death would have been a pretty effective clear here, but yeah, nothing doing. Go on, what were you going to say?
There's actually nothing that Warrior can do to deal with Mind Flayer, right? A lot of the time when Mind Flayer comes down, can I silence it? Can I bounce it, freeze it, stop it, change it, polymorph it, whatever? Warrior's like, nope, just gonna be there. Just gonna drop out whatever minion it's eating up. Just go with the time rip though. And again, I can actually respect this as well, mainly because one of the successes I've had versus Priest is when you just go too fast. You just beat him down, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
They don't have the mana available. They've got the cards, but not necessarily the mana available to stop you, which means that maybe leaving the Blood Bowl Brute up for the value play of using the Mind Flayer. Bozzzton was probably scared at just getting absolutely destroyed in the next couple of turns.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that my most of my knowledge is a couple of days out of date now, which really does kind of feel like a century right now, the way that little micro evolutions in the metagame are happening. And the more popular, the increasing popularity of like the Grom and so on in the list might actually make this a stronger matchup for the Warrior overall, because they do have that more consistent late game push with the deck.
Yeah, and it's not as if Priest really runs too many taunts to just keep putting little speed bumps in the way of the Grom finishers. A lot of it is just playing with what you get discovered if it goes to that kind of late game. But not even that, right? We've seen multiple times over the past couple of days where Grom just gets there around turn 8 or 9, which honestly for Priest is not really the late game. The late game, we're talking more towards the fatigue end of the game than we are just max mana.
I must consider.
Yeah, even just out of curiosity, I just looked up legend data for a list with Grom in it, and it's still reporting 42% against Galakron Priest, so yeah, it still seems pretty miserable.
Must move quickly.
So just gonna have a quick execute check. Viper, I didn't think he was. He's not running execute, which means actually that Bozzzton could consider preemptively apotheosising. Yeah, there we go. I went there. Just in terms of, it won't just get insta killed by an execute, so it can be quite likely to live with that extra health if he was forced to.
Yeah, that's fair. I do like this setup though, because Bozzzton is starting to get into the territory where he is scared of his health total. But this setup is kind of good apotheosis food anyway, because he just has the the multi-layered death rattle minion. So the weapon would have to go in, and then there would probably have to be some kind of skipper play or lackey play to take out the armor smith inside as well.
See Viper just saying, I ain't leaving you with a minion on board. A lot of respect there for the Mind Flayer and the Armor Smith, of course. Knowing full well that Apotheosis could really change the outcome of the game.
Yep.
I will act as your scale, Dragonlord.
That is Wretched Reclaimer. Just saying that out loud for myself more than anyone else, because I always get that mixed up with Mind Flayer cards.
Does it have access to a relatively cheap Blood Bowl Brute if he wanted to develop a skipper this turn as well?
He does, yeah. It's a really big push still as well, especially with the Kobold Lackey and so on. He's able to take care of the 2-2.
Yeah, the only problem is he would actually lose the Korkron, so he'd put the Korkron in.
Oh, sorry, you don't even have to do it with the skipper, necessarily. You can just, straight up Blood Boil Brute and Kobold Lackey and just push.
Oh, sure, do it that way. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Giddy up.
I was looking, for me, I was looking more at, how cheap does this Blood Bowl Brute go But you are right, with the mana available and the help of these lackeys, then yeah, this is not looking half bad actually. The Rush lackey helping out with the kobolds, as you said, big push, and honestly, once you break it down, I like it a lot. I feel like against Priest, you do not want the game to go on for a while.
So the scary thing, and I think a big reason why you saw Viper A use his first Blood Boil Brute super early, and B, I think if you watched his mouse movements, you could see him very heavily consider playing the second one on the very next turn after the first one got time ripped, is because the Blood Boil Brute is about the best card in your deck for Murazons to deal with. So you don't necessarily want to be playing them in the late game. So that's the kind of scary thing about this turn, right? Is that you're playing it directly into your opponent's Murazon turn. But there is this kind of obnoxious 2-3 taunt in the way to deal with that. So if he wants to play Murazon, or Bozzzton wants to play Murazon, there's still just 11 damage coming through the other way. Corsair Cash in hand, draws a weapon, lethal for 14. So normally, you'd be scared of making this play, because Blood Boil Brute, too much value. But right here, Viper just has a clean lethal setup, so he can just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and important to note, if you're not too familiar with Murazon, as it's been around for quite a while, but not really seen much play until now, outside of Alex Straz's, of course, it does not create the battle cry effects. The only effects it mimics are like live effects like Rush on this Blood Boil Brute. So the Blood Boil Brute created from Murazon would have Rush. Lackeys would just be a 1-1 on the board and that's it. So yeah, the taunt is a guaranteed blocker, right, for the Blood Boil, as you pointed out. So Natalie Celine is going to take down the Blood Boil, but that still leaves, what, 7 damage? Oh. There's also the Ethereal Lackey. And suddenly, this turn, Viper's much less scared of a Murazon, because, okay, Lackey, fine. There's a Rampage, 10.
Rampage is 10. Corsair Cash into the second live wire lance is 13.
40.
And that is all of his mana.
Oh yeah, you're right. You can evaluate.
But there's an 8-9 in play. They play Apotheosis.
It's gonna kill it though, right? It's not gonna kill it. Oh, okay. Penance. I actually presumed Viper was actually going to kill off the Cillian there.
He's just one off. Bozzzton can gain like 50 this turn.
He does have Grom top deck for Risky Skipper as well. He can push 10 from hand potentially. Or with the swing of the weapon. Maybe he just thinks he can beat an Apotheosis.
The future is clear. Your demise be near.
Is Skipper better or Smith?
Armor Smith, right?
Yeah.
You play the long call because you just penance down the Korkron.
Yeah, he doesn't have the minions to play to make Skipper good, so yeah, that makes sense.
Move quickly.
I do respect this effort from Viper, though, because this is the #1 weakness of Galakron Priest, and I think it's the #1... Oh!
It's lethal!
Oh!
Bozzzton is going to go nuts.
I'll show you who's boss.
Kapow!
Off the top.
There it
Yeah,
is.
there we
Okay.
go. I knew it. I knew it. I absolutely knew it. Got to be frustrating for Bozzzton there. You've got to feel for him. But honestly, I think Viper 1 was maybe actually correct to just push face and say, mate, you have the Apotheosis. But also, I think he has navigated not only that game, but this whole series extremely well. I feel like Viper right now is on point, honestly. I think he's been playing some fantastic Hearthstone. And maybe, I'm even going to go crazy, even though he was a semi-finalist, obviously, at Worlds. Finally, sorry. It might be playing the best I've seen him play. I think he's been so solid this match.
Get out of here, Raven. No, I really love the way that he played that, yeah. The point that I was making before I gradually lost my mind at the Grom top deck was that Priest's biggest weakness is that they draw 0 cards. And I think they actually do have a slightly inflated win rate right now by the fact that people give them credit for being able to do everything because they can do everything. But they can only do about 1/3 of those things per game because that's how many cards they draw by the time that you can actually all in them with a much more aggressive deck like Viper was doing. So I think Bozzzton still had 18 cards left remaining in his deck at that point. There's a very, very good chance that Apotheosis was not there. Trading into that, Natalie Celine, and leaving your opponent at 14 and giving up the majority of your board to do so, that was just miserable. That didn't really feel like living to Viper. So I think pushing all in there was absolutely the play. I think, you can argue he got rewarded for it with the Grom top deck after, as brutal as that will feel for Bozzzton.
Yeah, one thing to note as well is very easy with just the small sample size we've seen of that series, but we saw a couple of games of Priest, and we kept talking about Pyromancer. Didn't see it, because guess what? Doesn't draw that many cards. It's not like a lot of the decks in the meta right now. That draws.
One.
Exactly. And Priest isn't like a lot of the other decks right now, that it's likely you see, 70% of the deck every game, it feels like, minimum. Honestly, you look at Rogue, you look at Warrior, you look at even like Galakron Warlock as well, and Zoo. There's so many decks that draw everything. Priest, as you said quite rightly, that is the weakness. So that's maybe it's going to be a further development in the continued exploration deck building of Galakron Priest. But again, feel bad for Bozzzton. It was a rough way to go out, but still, congratulations to Viper. I think he played that whole series very, very well. So good job for him. We are going to go to a break while we set up our final match of the day. It'll be match number 5, so we'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.